All right, welcome to another online class. My name is Jan. I'm part of dox42 and the Business Technology Evangelist team. Together with my colleague Johannes, I would like to show you some of the new features that we're implementing with the new update. Specifically in Excel, we're looking at the example here of the sales report, which you should already be familiar with. Johannes will talk you through some of the implementations also in finance and operations, which will be relevant, and all the cool new handy solutions that you can implement with it. Now, not only should you already be familiar with the basics of the sales report, but also ideally know how to get started in Excel. And regarding a first sort of setup of dox42 in your Excel document, I highly recommend to watch the first class. That is the first document in Excel class that we have online. Now in this case, if we take a look at the data map, you see that we're dealing with several SQL databases. There is also the Excel data source connected here that we are using for the table that you see on the left. And we're working with several initialization rules. In particular, the shift down function is new. And you see that it's selected here already. We only need to set this check mark once, and then it counts for all these three entries, since they're all on the same sales countries sheet. If I close it over here, I will show you real quick, and that is the template on the right side. And you see that sales countries, that's the affected sheet. We further have sales months down here and charts, which of course are generated and based upon the data that we are including here in this table. Now, to illustrate what this new feature does, I will highlight these lines over here and go ahead to sort of change the color. And you note that something nice and visible like blue. If I save this, you note that essentially if you have a structure where you would like to include some data in a table format, and you have other information and content down below, you would of course like this sort of information to be pasted above, but not override your already existing information. So if I generate this, you see that we're selecting an employee. We may take Stephen Kim here as an example and see what his achievements were for 2022. Now, generating this document, you see that all the information pasted here has been neatly inserted, and the section below has been consequently shifted down. Again, all nice and in order. That is one of the key features that we have introduced. And there's a couple more things that I would like to highlight. First, I will revert back here to the old format that we had in terms of the layout. And now we are going back to the data map, and we are opening a data map that refers to all of the employees. Now this essentially, again, you see that we're dealing with, we're still working with the same data map and, well, excuse me, the same template and the same data map also, except from the input parameter regarding the selected employee. Now this actually refers to still the same data structure in the background, but we're generating for all employees primarily. And if we take a look at the selection here, you note that it's a bit more complex, not more complicated, but we have more entries here, and that is the initialization rules. You see that these four down here are new. In particular, for those of you that are a bit more familiar with dox42, you see, or you immediately recognize that this is a dox variable. So we are dynamically essentially including a sheet name here that comes out of the integrated data sources from the data map. And this you will note in a second. But besides this dynamic example, for those of you that are not familiar with what this structure means, there's also a simple name down here. We just called it new sheet, but you could really, you could also say test sheet, or however we would like to name it. We'll just go with that for now. And just to show you what this does, because you will note that, of course, these sort of dynamic names or also the test sheet, this is not included yet in the template. So if I take it as it is for now and generate this new format, we're selecting again a year. Let's leave it with 2021 for now, generate it, and you note that, wow, now we've got, if I make this a little larger, now we've got several new sheets down here. And you see our test sheet that we included, that we just named statically, but also all these employees, you know, with their different values in terms of the output, their sales output. Now, how did we do this? We'll take a closer look again at the data map, particularly down here. Now, you see that one thing that I already showed you is the shift down rows. This actually, you know, enabled us to dynamically include more lines down here, more rows as we need them. And now this initialization target range, the new function is that if you include a sheet name that doesn't exist yet, dox42 will automatically include that for you and create this new sheet. And as you have seen here, this can be done also fully dynamically for a data structure that you are using. Now in this case, a couple things that are also still relevant, and that is the repeat for data source, which is not a new feature, but it is useful here because you note that, of course, for these 3 entries where we're creating a new data sheet, that we would like to have these data sheets not just for one of the employees, but for all of them. So we say repeat for the data source employee data. And second point that we're including here is that the copy worksheet selection, and here you simply write down which current worksheet you would like to use as essentially a format template. So you notice that this look actually, right, the layout in terms of the colors and fonts and content, right, that is not dynamically included or inserted rather, that comes from the sales country sheet down here. So again, this is essentially a format template that is used for these new sheets. And of course here we are repeating over a data source. Now just to recap this really quickly, this is our template here on the right. This is a sales countries sheet, and this sheet, we use this layout. You notice that there's some functions in here, for example, there's font sizes and font colors, and this is copied into these new sheets, for instance, the test sheet, or, you know, for Lana Masters, so John Hinders, you know, with their subsequent data. Of course, we also have charts, you know, that were generated, but all of this has already been discussed in the past, since that's already current functionalities. But that was the new update. And now I would like to wish you much success moving forward and enjoy the finance and operations integration by Johannes.
Let's get started with the second part of today's dox42 class. What we will have a look into now is that how can you use the Excel capabilities that you've gained with the new version in a combination with an application. And as an example for today, what we will do is we will do it in finance and operations. So as you see here, those who are familiar and the F&O specialists, this is finance and operations. But those of you who are just looking for the Excel integration, bear with me, we will see all of this in a second. The goal of this would be that, for example, we have a list, and in that list, as an example for today, we will have the vendors list, and this we want either to output in an Excel sheet where you will have all of them in one list, or the second option, which we will also do, is that those that we can select here will then have a separate spreadsheet per the one that I selected. And before going into detail about the Excel integration, let me show you one example of what we have done already with the dox42 integration in F&O as a PDF. So let's just generate the one that many of you probably have already seen, to generate a standard PDF as a Word template in the background, which we will then in the second step move to something where we can use the Excel capabilities. Well, as you see here, this is to what many of you know is in the background the Word template, and it gets output as the PDF. Of course, all of this based on our selection. And if we just close this, two things that you will see once again, if we go here, you will be able also to create Excel outputs where one will be, as I said, based on the list that we've just had, and the other will create a separate spreadsheet for each of the ones that I've selected here. And those of you are familiar with the finance and operations capabilities, of course, in this case, we're doing it based on an entity. You could do the very same thing also based on a report. This was just the example that we wanted to choose for today. So obviously, as you see, let's get started with the first example. The first one, so there's the Excel list of vendors, will basically output what we already have here. But it will, of course, also take the output that you would like to see. So you can also choose, of course, the print medium, which you're used to with dox42. And if in here, for example, we'd take, let's take again the email, which is a very common example because, of course, you want to, for example, in an ERP system, send out, for example, a product list, a vendor list, whatever you want to provide to any of the stakeholders. Let's send an email. We will send it to a specific email in this case, of course. The finance and operations experts from you will know that you can, of course, work with variables here. So it's doesn't need to be a hard-coded one. And at the end of the day, the subject and also the rest and the file name will be taken from the configuration we've already done in the background and which we will see later towards the end of this session. As the focus will be on Excel, not so much F&O for the moment, but the F&O specialist will see this in a second as well. Okay, so let's send out the email first, which will be triggered, sent to Michaela, and the final format is the Excel with the rest of the parameters already predefined. This has been output, processed, and if I just have a look into Michaela's inbox, we will see, great, we've already received an email with the vendor details. There is even a combination of the data with the Word template that you see here. Basically what this also is in the background is the Word template again that we now use as the email body. It's a very simple case because in this case all we did is that the PDF you've seen previously we've just chosen to use as the mail body. But of course in there what you can also do is that for the vendor list and for the email template to have it very specific on what you would like to achieve with the data that is included both in the Excel as well as in the email body. And if we have a look into the vendor list, it's pretty much what you expect from an Excel, right? You define a formatting, you define the fields, and it gets the output, and it will take whatever you have there. It will take the formulas. If, let's say, you'd have some sums in there, it would take those two. Now, this is the example where we have all of them in one list. Let's move to another one where we basically use the same capabilities, but in this case, what we'd like to output is a separate spreadsheet per selection. I keep the same selection. I'm just pressing a separate button with again the same capabilities in here. And let's just send it out again to the customer in this case, which would be Michaela. And this will then hopefully lead to the second example where we, from the application directly, will be able to see that the document we will now receive is a separate one. Of course, we will see this later on that all of the for example, the header, also the file name, this is something you can define dynamically. And of course, you can use variables for this. So for example, if you want to take any of the information that you've selected to dynamically name the file, or maybe also up here, you want to have the header and the footer according, or the subject, that you can do. Looking into the Excel once more, will show us we've done the very same thing, but in this case separately, that this automation has triggered that basically for each of the ones that we've selected, there is a separate spreadsheet here. In terms of use cases, of course, you can get super creative here because this is just going to be the vendor list. But if you want to do this, let's say for your product and you want to create product sheets that each of them have the information on it, or you want to create a product list. And of course, all of this is taking the whole formatting already that you have had in the Excel in the template format. All right, so much for that example. Also, of course, here again with what we've seen previously in the list. And let's jump into the templates for a second. So the templates, in this case, it's a combination with dox42 online. So our templates are in a SharePoint in this case. So there is the FO templates here, where in a prod environment, there is the vendor fact sheet. And you see there is two separate Excel templates that each represent the one or the other case. And if we get into those, we can, of course, always, as you're used to, open them in the app. And if we click on dox42 and generate, there is just one simple trick that you need to bear in mind, that for Excel, you will need to, because with Word and with PowerPoint, the document always knows where the data map is. With Excel, it's the other way around. So when generating Excels, we will just need to open the data map file once we generate them. And if we jump here, in the prod, in the vendor fact sheet, we have the individual sheets as a template offer. So of course we need the individual sheets data map. I'm always, of course, logging in with Azure Active Directory, which is very importantly, and with the color record filter, I can also, of course, test this entire document locally. And similar to what we've already previously seen in what Moritz has shown us, this of course works the same way in the template design. It's just that this case, it's integrating finance and operations data, which if we have a look into the data mapping, you will see that there is an FO entity in this case, which then has a spreadsheet output where we again have the very same thing here with the different information, with a dynamic target range, with, well, obviously everything that we've already previously seen, but in this case, based on the finance and operations data. Right. The second example, as you've previously seen already in the generated version, would be quite the same. The only difference would be that it's, in this case, not generating the new document per spreadsheet, but it would just do the list with the repetition as we've previously seen in Moritz's session. And the last thing that I just want to show you, after we finished a very, very short deep dive into the templates here, that of course in finance and operations, I've just shown one of the examples of the outputs that you can do. The rest will work according to what you've already previously seen previously maybe used in, for example, let's use the vendors per spreadsheet. And if we take, for example, the SharePoint and we take the site code, and we also do the predefined what we've already what is predefined in the finance and operations configuration. So let's just click on OK here. This will then output that very file into a SharePoint storage. You could, of course, do both at the same time, however you prefer to do those. And if we again go back to the same location as we have the templates, it doesn't need to be. It's just that in this case it is. In the D365 FO documents, we just a few seconds ago have generated a new spreadsheet that also has a naming, of course, dynamically, which is the one based on our selections that we now did also again with the files here. And as you can see, this is just the output file. So of course I can also open this in Excel online if you want to do it this way, but many, many options in the whole Microsoft ecosystem. Good, that's that. The last one that we still need to check on is for the finance and operations experts. So let's have a look into the dox42 administration. So let's go in the classic way. So we would want to go to the system administration. There will be dox42. If you in your environment miss any of those, you probably are on not on the newest release. So please feel free to update at any time. And if we go into our dox42 parameters, we could now, there's the generate document as for Word templates, which is the general option for dox42 in this environment. It will be in probably 99% of the cases. So we recommend this if you prefer to have most of the templates in Word, which it usually is. If we go to our reports, this is where we are used to generating sales invoice. Of course, we could also use the Excel capabilities for the standard reports. No problem. You could do so, or if you want to archive it in the Excel way, but you also want to have the Word template used for something, perfectly fine to be used for this. What we've done in this case is if we go to the data entities, there are multiple options, and the ones we've chosen are, for example, let's take the PDF list of vendors, which already existed before, but most importantly, those two below with the Excel. And if we scroll to the side a little more, you will see there is a new parameter, which is operation. And in that, generate document is for all the Word templates, but generate spreadsheet is used for all the Excel. And if we more specifically have a look into the data entity setup, of course, would be the equivalent in the report section. What we do here is we choose the operation generate spreadsheet, as it has already been on a global level for that entity entry. And what we need, that's one thing that you just need to bear in mind specifically. Also for those of you who do it with the server design or with any other application, it's important to use the DDM file here, because this will know where the Excel is. And if it does, it will generate accordingly. The rest, what you see here, is similar to what we already, of course, can use with Word nowadays in F&O. So for example, there's the template name, the email. Well, this was the Word document that we've in the very beginning generated as a PDF, which was then the email template name. And the rest of the parameters are those that we didn't fill in, but are already predefined here. In this case, they are just fixed, but of course, here you can also work with dox42 variables the way you're used to. And yeah, for example, the SharePoint file name we didn't fill in. It was picked from here from the standards, and it worked perfectly fine. Good. So much for the Excel integration into an application, and for the F&O specialists of you. This is the way to go if you want to integrate dox42 with an Excel output into your F&O. We hope there is already a lot of creativity we could spark with this, and very much looking forward to the next class.